The inheritance. Clear Vexy had always been good at finding trouble, but inheriting a spaceship while knee-deep in a bar fight on Luna was a new personal record. The message had arrived 3 days earlier through the United Galactic Civil Registry, to whom it may concern, I, Alana Vexy, leave everything to my niece Clear. Attached was a hastily scanned legal document, a red lipstick print that might have been a signature, and a blurry photo of someone who looked smugly familiar. Clear, 19 and recently expelled from the Terran Academy of Applied Governance for hacking a voting AI to make every candidate's name legally changed to Gary, had been trying to forget her problems in the seediest bar Luna had to offer. It wasn't her bar, and it definitely wasn't her fight, but the Vexy family had never been known for their good judgment. "You've inherited a spaceship," announced the humanoid lawyer with 6 eyebrows and the distinct smell of legal paperwork. It wasn't the kind of sentence you said quietly, and it wasn't the kind of bar that handled surprises well. Clear managed to dodge only 2 plasma bottles before someone's fist connected with her jaw. She grabbed her dented suitcase, a half-smoked cinnamon stick, and what remained of her dignity, then made a run for it through the back exit. 3 days, 17 credits in toll fines, and 1 mandatory therapy session with an AI that insisted it was Freud later, Clear found herself standing under the burning light of twin suns at the absolute back end of nowhere, staring at what could generously be called a spaceship. The lucky liar sat crooked on the landing pad like a drunk spider trying to curtsy. Panels buzzed in electrical protest, and the landing gear looked like it had been welded by someone who believed duct tape was a legitimate engineering solution. The boarding ramp hung halfway open, as if it had given up mid-deployment and decided, close enough, was good enough. Beside the ship sat a creature that, if you squinted really hard, might have looked like a cat. If you didn't squint, it looked like a taxidermy experiment gone wrong. White and fluffy, with eyes that shimmered like dark matter having a bad day, it wore an expression that clearly communicated, "You may think you own this ship, but I've urinated in more dignified places." Clear blinked at it. The cat blinked back. Somewhere inside the ship, something exploded quietly. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered. The cat's ears twitched, and a tinny voice from the ship's external speakers announced, "Universal translation activated. Subject says, 'Welcome home, new servant. I require premium food immediately.'" Clear stared at the cat. The cat yawned and began cleaning its paw with the casual indifference of someone who had never worried about rent, student loans, or where their next meal was coming from. As she climbed aboard her inheritance, Clear couldn't shake the feeling that her aunt's final gift was about to make her life infinitely more complicated. First contact. The lucky liar's interior looked like it had been designed by someone who'd read a spaceship manual upside down and decided to wing it. The cockpit was built for someone with either longer arms or possibly more of them. The smell hovered somewhere between burnt toast and damp bureaucracy, and the pilot's seat had been replaced with what appeared to be a lawn chair from someone's back patio. Scrawled across the dashboard in fading ink were the words, "Don't push the green button." Seriously. There were 9 green buttons. Clear dropped her bag and surveyed her new domain while the cat, who had apparently decided the navigator's console made an excellent throne, settled in for what looked like a long nap. "Fine," she announced to no one in particular, "but you're not getting a name." The cat opened one eye and made a sound that the ship's outdated universal translator helpfully converted to, "Excellent. Now initiate emergency takeoff." "They found us." "They found what now?" Clear started to ask, but her question was answered by the low whistle of incoming mortars echoing from the horizon. Without thinking, she punched the nearest button, definitely one of the green ones, and the lucky liar jerked to life with all the grace of a wet fish in a microwave. From the outside, it probably looked like a disaster trying to escape an even worse disaster. Dust kicked up, alarms rang, and a loose toilet seat flew out the back hatch, taking out an innocent cactus in the process. But they were airborne. "Well," Clear muttered, strapping herself into the lawn chair as the cat curled into a satisfied ball, "this is going to suck." It didn't suck immediately, which was honestly more than she'd expected. As it turned out, the lucky liar had something of a reputation. It also had a bounty on it, war tech hidden beneath the malfunctioning panels, political secrets crammed into the glove compartment, and a cargo hold full of what appeared to be vintage Terran breakfast cereal. Oh, and it had a message. Half an hour into their first post-takeoff meal of questionable noodles and whatever the cat was eating, the ship's main screen flickered to life. A hologram of Aunt Alana appeared, wearing what looked like half a military uniform and half a bathrobe. "If you're seeing this, congratulations," she said, sipping something that might have been antifreeze. "You've inherited the worst decision I ever made." She gestured toward the cat, who was now washing his paw with the dedication of a monk at prayer. "This is Noodles. He's not actually a cat. He's an asset, classified above top secret, which means at least 7 factions, 3 empires, and 1 very angry moon cult want him either dead or married into their royal family." Clear looked at Noodles. Noodles looked back and yawned. "You'll be tempted to sell the ship," Alana continued. "Don't. It's alive. Don't sleep in the weapons bay, and whatever you do, never let Noodles access the internal communication system." The hologram glitched. "Oh, and sweetie. If the Velian Empire contacts you, tell them I'm dead. Not fake dead, the good kind." The message ended with an awkward wink and what sounded suspiciously like a digitized fart. Clear stared at Noodles. Noodles stared back. Then the comms system lit up like a festival. "Incoming transmission from Velian Empire, Duke of Finance and Aggression," the ship announced cheerfully. Clear sighed and accepted the call. A 12-tentacled creature with an expression that screamed, "middle management," filled the screen. "Clear Vexy," it purred with barely contained menace. "We know what you carry. Hand over the asset, or prepare to be audited." Clear had never experienced a Velian audit, but she was pretty sure it involved fire and possibly paperwork. She hit what she hoped was the evasive maneuvers button, causing the ship to release a smoke screen of glitter and toast crumbs. "Define asset," she said, buying time. "Don't play games, Terran. We tracked your aunt for years. That feline monstrosity holds the keys to the Helix protocol." Clear leaned back in her lawn chair with more confidence than she felt. "Cool. I'll trade him for immunity, 12 million credits, and a sandwich. Preferably ham." The Velian screamed something that sounded like legal rage, and the screen exploded in a shower of sparks. "Why does everyone hate you?" Clear asked Noodles. The ship's translator crackled. "He says, I dated badly." Before Clear could ask what that meant, the rear sensor started pinging warnings about 6 hostile ships closing fast, launching what the computer ominously described as bureaucratic projectiles. Noodles meowed once. The ship responded by activating something called Defensive Protocol, Marriage Counseling, which launched 2 holograms who immediately began arguing about financial trust and communication issues. The enemy ships, apparently unable to handle the awkwardness, backed off in confusion. "That shouldn't have worked," Clear said. "It always does," the ship replied smugly. As they drifted through space at a lazy pace, Clear found herself on the ship's observation deck with Noodles beside her, both watching the stars flicker past. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Clear sighed. "So you're some kind of universal key, bioweapon, code thing?" Noodles flicked his ear. The translator whispered, "Something worse. I'm leverage." Somewhere far away, beneath 6 layers of government, 3 shadow councils, and 1 very expensive restaurant, a red light began blinking. The lucky liar had returned to active space, and everyone was about to have a very bad fiscal year. The chase begins. Clear had just managed to fall asleep in what passed for the ship's bedroom when the lucky liar's proximity alarms started screaming like they'd stubbed their digital toe. "Incoming hail from the Interplanetary Court of Sanctions and Misunderstandings," the ship announced with the enthusiasm of someone delivering bad news at a funeral. "We just escaped flying spreadsheets, and now it's space lawyers." Clear groaned, rolling out of her bunk. "Worse," the ship replied. "Diplomats. The message arrived as a blue orb that materialized above the communications table, flickering into the shape of a humanoid face so symmetrical and soothing it had to be artificial. He wore the practiced expression of someone who'd studied empathy in a mirror for years but still didn't quite understand what it was supposed to feel like. "Greetings," he said in a tone that dripped like overpriced cheese. "I'm Envoy Thalen, representing the United Systems Negotiation Authority. You are harboring a Class Delta diplomatic anomaly." He smiled in a way that made it sound like a compliment. "We'd like to discuss terms for a peaceful resolution." Clear looked at Noodles, who was sitting on the communications console licking his paw with the casual indifference of someone who had caused at least 3 interstellar incidents before breakfast. "What kind of terms?" she asked. "Standard diplomatic immunity package," Thalen replied smoothly. "Full pardons, clean records, a modest stipend, and all you have to do is hand over the cat." "His name is Noodles," Clear said, surprising herself by feeling protective of the furry disaster magnet. "The designation is irrelevant. What matters is the safe transfer of the asset to proper authorities." Noodles chose that moment to hack up what appeared to be a hairball, except instead of hair, it was a small, glowing cube that pulsed with ominous energy. "Is that?" Clear started. "A condensed star map to every major hyperspace route in the galaxy," the ship's AI supplied helpfully. "Also known as the Helix Protocol Navigation Core. Very illegal. Very valuable. Very likely to cause wars if it falls into the wrong hands." Envoy Thalen's practiced smile flickered. "I'm afraid the situation has become more urgent. Please prepare for diplomatic boarding." The transmission cut out, and immediately the ship's sensors started lighting up like a celebration. 12 vessels had just dropped out of hyperspace around them, each one broadcasting different faction identifiers. "So," Clear said to Noodles as she strapped herself back into the pilot's lawn chair, "want to tell me how you ended up with a galaxy's worth of hyperspace routes stored in your digestive system?" Noodles meowed something that the translator rendered as, "long story." Short version: "I ate the wrong data pad at a diplomatic dinner. Your aunt thought it was hilarious." "Of course she did," Clear muttered, checking the ship's weapon systems. According to the display, they had defensive capabilities that included sarcasm cannons, bureaucratic smoke screen, and something ominously labeled the divorce beam. The first boarding attempt came from a sleek Centauri vessel that tried to attach itself to their hull with magnetic clamps. Clear activated what she hoped was a defensive system and watched in amazement as their ship began broadcasting what sounded like an incredibly boring insurance seminar. The Centauri ship detached immediately and fled. "Effective," she admitted. The second attempt came from 3 different directions at once: Velian Empire, Terran Confederacy, and something called the Free Traders Union. Clear was beginning to understand why her aunt had lived like a hermit on the edge of known space. "Noodles," she said as plasma bolts started lighting up the space around them, "please tell me you have more tricks than just coughing up classified navigation data." The cat fixed her with a look of feline superiority and began purring. The sound seemed to resonate through the ship's hull, and suddenly every attacking vessel's weapons system started malfunctioning in increasingly creative ways. Lasers fired backward, missiles launched into each other, and one unfortunate ship somehow managed to tangle itself in its own tractor beam. "Subsonic frequency disruption," the ship explained. "He's basically weaponized contentment." "You're full of surprises," Clear told Noodles, who responded by curling up in her lap as if interdimensional space battles were merely an inconvenience to his nap schedule. The lucky liar limped away from the engagement with most of its systems intact and several new scorch marks that the ship seemed oddly proud of. They'd bought themselves time, but Clear knew it wouldn't last long. "So what's the plan?" she asked Noodles as they drifted through an asteroid field that provided temporary cover. "He says," the translator whispered, "that your aunt left specific instructions for this scenario. There's a data cache hidden in the ship's emergency supplies, behind the expired nutrition bars." Clear found the cache exactly where Noodles had indicated, a small data pad tucked between packages of something labeled "definitely not cheese" and "emergency protein, flavor unknown." Alana's face appeared on the screen, this time wearing what looked like a chef's hat and an expression of grim determination. If you're watching this, it means the worst-case scenario has happened, and every major power in the galaxy is trying to get their hands on my cat, she began. First rule of galactic politics, clear: when everyone wants something, it's usually because no one should have it. The recording glitched for a moment. There's a way out, but it's going to require you to do something spectacularly stupid. Head for the Kepler station in the neutral zone. Ask for Marcus Webb. Tell him Alana says it's time to pay his debt. And whatever you do, don't let them take Noodles alive. The message ended abruptly, leaving Clear staring at the blank screen while Noodles began washing his tail with renewed intensity. Marcus Webb, she repeated. Know him? Noodles paused his grooming long enough to meow something that the translator converted to, old boyfriend. Terrible at karaoke. Owes your aunt 3 favors and a bottle of Alteron brandy. Clear plotted a course for Kepler station, hoping that her aunt's network of questionable connections would prove more reliable than her taste in men. Behind them, the various fleets were regrouping, and ahead lay the neutral zone, a stretch of space where the only law was that there were no laws, and the only guarantee was that nothing was guaranteed. As they jumped to hyperspace, Clear couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much more complicated. Noodles seemed to share her concern, or maybe he was just annoyed that the artificial gravity had disrupted his nap. Either way, they were committed now. Political games. Kepler station looked like someone had built a city inside a giant donut and then let it evolve without any building codes or safety regulations. Ships of every conceivable design were docked to its outer ring, from sleek diplomatic vessels to rust bucket traders that looked like they'd been held together with hope and spite. Clear piloted the Lucky Liar through the controlled chaos of the docking approach, following automated instructions that seemed to change their minds every few seconds. Noodles sat on the navigation console, tail twitching with what might have been anticipation or gas. Docking Bay 94, the station's traffic control announced. Welcome to Kepler Station, where your business is your business, and your business is probably illegal. The docking bay was a maze of cargo containers, questionable-looking individuals, and the kind of ambient lighting that suggested most business here happened in the shadows. Clear had barely finished the docking sequence when a figure emerged from behind a stack of unmarked crates. Marcus Webb looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 5, with the kind of weathered face that came from too many bad decisions and not enough sleep. He wore a coat that had seen better decades and an expression that suggested he'd been expecting them. Clear Vexy, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. You look like your aunt. Sorry for your loss. You knew her well. Marcus's smile was complicated. Well enough to know that if she sent you to me, things have gone spectacularly wrong. Where's the cat? Noodles chose that moment to appear at the ship's airlock, fixing Marcus with a stare that could have melted steel. Marcus stared back, and something passed between them that Clear didn't understand but didn't much like. Hello, Noodles, Marcus said quietly. Still causing trouble, I see. Noodles meowed something that the ship's translator rendered as, hello, Marcus. Still terrible at keeping secrets, I see. He's got a point, Marcus admitted. Half the station knows you're here. The other half is placing bets on how long you'll survive. That's encouraging, Clear muttered. Alana said you owed her favors. 3 of them, plus a bottle of brandy I've been saving for a special occasion. Marcus looked around the docking bay nervously. This qualifies. Follow me, but stay close. The neutral zone has rules, but they're more like aggressive suggestions. They made their way through the station's corridors, which seemed to twist and turn according to their own logic. The walls were covered with advertisements in dozens of languages, most of them promising things that were definitely illegal in civilized space. Clear noticed that wherever they went, conversations stopped and people found urgent business elsewhere. Popular guy, she observed. Not me, Marcus replied. Him. He nodded toward Noodles, who was trotting along as if he owned the place. Word travels fast out here. Half the galaxy's looking for that cat, and the other half is trying to figure out why. They arrived at what looked like a cross between a cantina and a diplomatic reception hall. The lighting was dim, the music was questionable, and the clientele appeared to represent every major species in the galaxy, plus a few that Clear was pretty sure didn't officially exist. Marcus led them to a private booth in the back, where a figure was waiting in the shadows. As they approached, Clear realized it was Envoy Thalen, still wearing his practiced diplomatic smile. "Ms. Vexy," he said pleasantly. "How unexpected to see you here." "Not really," Marcus said, sliding into the booth. "I called him." Clear felt her stomach drop. "You what?" "Relax," Marcus said quickly. "Alana's first favor. I'm supposed to arrange a meeting between all interested parties. Neutral ground, civilized discussion, everybody walks away happy. And if they don't walk away happy, then we implement Alana's second favor, which is significantly less civilized." More figures emerged from the shadows, representatives from the Velian Empire, the Terran Confederacy, the Free Traders Union, and several others that Clear didn't recognize. They arranged themselves around the expanded table like players in the galaxy's most dangerous poker game. Noodles jumped onto the table and sat in the center, washing his paw with the casual indifference of someone who'd been the center of attention at interstellar incidents before. "Gentlemen, ladies, and assorted entities," Thalen began, "we're here to discuss the peaceful transfer of a valuable asset." "The cat stays with me," Clear interrupted. "The asset," a Velian representative corrected, "contains classified navigation data that belongs to the Galactic Navigation Authority. Which was stolen from the Terran Defense Archive," added the Confederacy delegate. "After being illegally copied from Free Trader Union databases," another voice chimed in. The arguments quickly devolved into a chaos of competing claims, historical grievances, and what appeared to be personal insults in several languages. Clear watched the diplomatic process unfold with growing amazement and horror. "This is how galactic politics works," she whispered to Marcus. "On a good day," he replied. "Usually there's more shooting." Noodles, apparently bored with the proceedings, coughed up another glowing cube. This one was different, smaller, pulsing with a soft blue light that made everyone at the table suddenly very quiet. "Emergency diplomatic protocols," the station's AI announced over the intercom. "All parties are now bound by Station Law 247, no violence during active negotiations." "What's that?" Clear asked. "Insurance," Marcus said. "Your aunt's third favor." She knew this would happen. Envoy Thalen was studying the new cube with the expression of someone who just realized the game had changed. "That's not navigation data." "No," said a new voice from the shadows. "It's something much more interesting." The figure who stepped into the light was tall, elegant, and wearing the kind of outfit that cost more than most people's spaceships. She had the bearing of someone who was used to being the most dangerous person in any room, and the smile of someone who enjoyed it. "Ambassador Kestra," Thalen said, and Clear heard actual worry in his voice for the first time. "Hello, Thalen. Still playing with other people's toys, I see." She looked at Clear with interest. "You must be Vexy's niece. You have her eyes. And apparently her talent for finding trouble." "Who are you?" Clear asked. "Someone who knew your aunt very well," Kestra replied. "And someone who knows what that cat really is." She gestured to Noodles, who had stopped grooming and was now staring at her with what Clear was beginning to recognize as his "something bad is about to happen" expression. "Care to enlighten the rest of us?" Clear asked. Kestra's smile widened. "He's not carrying stolen data. He's carrying the location of something much more valuable. Something your aunt found and hid, something that every government in the galaxy would kill for." "Which is?" "The original Galactic Peace Treaty. The real one. The one that proves half the current territorial claims in the galaxy are fraudulent." The silence that followed was so complete that Clear could hear the station's life support systems humming. Then everyone started talking at once, voices rising in panic, anger, and what sounded like several different languages versions of "oh no." Clear looked at Noodles, who looked back at her with an expression that clearly said, "Now you're beginning to understand." The meeting was about to get very interesting. The final gambit. The diplomatic meeting had devolved into what could charitably be called intense negotiations, and more accurately described as barely contained pandemonium. Representatives from a dozen different factions were arguing in at least 6 languages, while Noodles sat in the center of the table like a furry catalyst for galactic chaos. The original peace treaty was destroyed centuries ago, Envoy Thalen insisted, though his practiced diplomatic calm was showing cracks. Was it? Ambassador Kestra asked with predatory amusement. Or was it hidden by someone who understood that sometimes the best way to keep the peace is to remind everyone what they have to lose? Clea was beginning to understand why her aunt had lived like a hermit. Every time someone explained something, it made everything else more complicated. "So let me get this straight," she said, holding up a hand to quiet the arguing diplomats. "My cat isn't carrying stolen navigation data. He's carrying the location of a treaty that could invalidate half the territorial claims in the galaxy." "Not just territorial claims," Marcus added grimly. "Trade agreements, military alliances, colonial rights. If that treaty surfaces, it could reshape the entire political structure of known space. Which is why," said a new voice, "it must never be found." The speaker stepped out of what Clear had assumed was solid wall. Apparently Kepler Station had more hidden passages than she'd realized. The figure was encased in power armor that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought subtlety was a weakness. Energy weapons were built into both arms, and the helmet displayed no features except 2 glowing red sensors. "Shadow Guard," Thalen whispered, and Clear heard genuine fear in his voice. "The treaty stays hidden," the armored figure announced in a voice like grinding metal. "The cat dies. The girl dies. The status quo is maintained." "Now hold on just a minute," Clear started, but the Shadow Guard was already raising its weapon arm. That's when Noodles did something Clear had never seen before. He stood up, arched his back, and began to glow. Not with the soft blue light of the data cubes, but with a harsh white radiance that made everyone in the room throw up their hands to shield their eyes. When the light faded, Noodles was no longer a cat. He was still small, still furry, but now he had 6 legs, gossamer wings that shimmered like starlight, and eyes that held the depth of galaxies. His voice, when he spoke, bypassed the universal translator entirely and seemed to resonate directly in everyone's minds. "The charade ends now," he said, and his mental voice carried the weight of authority that came from beings much older and more powerful than anyone in the room. "I am not an asset. I am not a weapon. I am a keeper, guardian of the balance between the peoples of the galaxy." The Shadow Guard's weapons powered down involuntarily. "Impossible. The keepers are extinct. We are diminished, not extinct. And we grow tired of watching the children of the galaxy play their games with forces they do not understand." Clear stared at the creature that had been purring in her lap just hours before. "You're not really a cat." "I am whatever form serves the purpose of maintaining balance," Noodles replied, though his mental voice carried a hint of what might have been affection. "Your aunt understood this. She helped me when my previous form was compromised." "So what happens now?" Clear asked. Noodles turned to address the room full of diplomats, politicians, and the increasingly nervous Shadow Guard. "The treaty will be returned to its proper place, not hidden, but held in trust by those who understand its true purpose. The balance will be maintained." "And what's our part in this?" Clear asked. "You will continue to fly the Lucky Liar," Noodles said, and now his voice carried a hint of the cat-like satisfaction she'd grown familiar with. "The galaxy has many places where balance is needed, and many people who require guidance." Ambassador Kestra was the first to understand. "You're offering us a choice. Work with you to maintain stability, or face the consequences of a power vacuum when everyone's territorial claims become invalid simultaneously." "The keepers do not make threats," Noodles replied mildly. We simply remind people of the natural consequences of their actions. One by one, the various faction representatives began nodding agreement. Even the Shadow Guard slowly lowered its weapons and stepped back into whatever shadow it had emerged from. So that's it? Clear asked. We just keep flying around, and you keep the galaxy from tearing itself apart. It is not such a bad life, Noodles said, and for a moment his mental voice sounded almost wistful. Your aunt seemed to enjoy it. She would, Clear muttered, but she was smiling despite herself. As the diplomatic gathering dispersed, with much more politeness than it had begun, Marcus approached Clear with a bottle of what looked like very expensive alcohol. From Alana, he said. With instructions to open it when you figured out what you'd really inherited. Clear looked at the bottle, then at Noodles, who had resumed his cat-like appearance and was now sitting on Marcus's shoulder like nothing unusual had happened. I inherited a cosmic responsibility disguised as a pet, she said. And a ship that's older than most civilizations, and a reputation that will either make you famous or get you killed, Marcus added helpfully. Probably both, Noodles agreed, beginning to purr again. Clear opened the bottle and poured 3 glasses. To Aunt Alana, she said, raising her glass. For leaving me the most complicated inheritance in galactic history. To balance, Marcus added. To new beginnings, Noodles said, though he declined the alcohol in favor of beginning an elaborate grooming session. As they left Kepler Station, the Lucky Liar's destination computer was already displaying a list of potential trouble spots across the galaxy, places where the balance was threatened, where someone needed guidance, or where a slightly irregular spaceship and its unusual crew might make the difference between peace and chaos. Clear settled into her pilot's lawn chair, Noodles curled up on the navigation console, and the ship's AI began playing what sounded suspiciously like easy listening music from the early days of space travel. So, she said to Noodles as they jumped to hyperspace, any other secrets I should know about? Many, Noodles replied contentedly. But they will reveal themselves when the time is right. For now, we have a galaxy to explore and a balance to maintain. And maybe some actual cat food next time we dock somewhere, Clear added. I would not object to premium food, Noodles agreed. 3 months later, Clear had developed what she generously called a routine. Wake up to the ship's alarms warning about diplomatic incidents, drink something that might have been coffee if you didn't ask too many questions, and spend the day mediating disputes between species who couldn't agree on what constituted breathable atmosphere, let alone territorial boundaries. The Lucky Liar had become something of a legend in the outer systems, part diplomatic vessel, part traveling circus, part cosmic joke that somehow kept the galaxy from falling apart. They'd prevented 2 trade wars, resolved a marriage dispute between the leaders of warring asteroid colonies, and once spent an entire week helping a lost space whale find its migration route. Noodles had revealed himself to be not just a keeper, but apparently one with a sense of humor that bordered on the cosmic. He delighted in appearing as different creatures depending on the situation, sometimes a cat, sometimes something with more legs and fewer explanations, and once, memorably, as what appeared to be a small dragon during negotiations with a species that considered dragons to be divine messengers. You know, Clear said one evening as they drifted through a nebula that painted their viewport in shades of purple and gold, I never asked what happened to the rest of the keepers. Noodles, currently in his preferred cat form, paused in his eternal grooming ritual. Some chose to sleep until the galaxy was ready for their return. Others merged with the cosmic forces they had sworn to protect. A few. He seemed to consider his words carefully. A few became so invested in maintaining balance that they forgot they were supposed to be separate from it. And you? I chose to remain active, to watch and guide where I could. Your aunt helped me understand that sometimes the best way to maintain balance is to remember what it feels like to be off balance. Clear smiled, thinking of Alana's chaotic legacy. She had a talent for that. Their comfortable moment was interrupted by the ship's communications system crackling to life. A familiar face appeared on the screen, Envoy Thalen, looking considerably more relaxed than the last time they'd seen him. Clear, Noodles, he said with what appeared to be genuine warmth. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just existential contemplation in cat grooming, Clear replied. What's the crisis this time? Nothing catastrophic, for once. The Centauri Republic and the Vegan Trade Consortium have finally agreed to honor the mining rights treaty you helped negotiate. They're planning a celebration, and they've specifically requested your presence. A party where people aren't shooting at each other. Clear looked at Noodles. That's new. It gets better, Thalen continued. They're naming a space station after you. The Clear Vexy Memorial Station for Diplomatic Solutions. Memorial? Clear sputtered. I'm not dead. It was the closest translation. The Centauri don't really have a word for someone who fixes things by accident while trying not to get killed. Noodles made a sound that might have been laughter. Accept the honor, he advised. It will be useful to have a permanent base of operations. Plus, Thalen added, the station comes with a full diplomatic staff, a class A medical facility, and what I'm told is an excellent cafeteria. Premium food? Noodles asked with interest. The finest in 3 sectors, Thalen confirmed. Clear looked around the Lucky Liar's cramped interior, with its jury-rigged systems, questionable odors, and the lawn chair that served as her pilot's seat. Then she looked at Noodles, who was watching her with those galaxy-deep eyes that held wisdom older than most stars. What do you think? She asked. Ready to be semi-respectable? I think, Noodles said, settling into his favorite spot on the navigation console, that your aunt would be proud. You've taken her worst decision and turned it into something that actually helps people. And you? Any regrets about ending up with the chaos magnet branch of the Vexy family? Noodles began to purr, the sound resonating through the ship's hull in a way that made the stars outside seem to twinkle in rhythm. No regrets. The galaxy is a better place when someone is willing to embrace the beautiful disaster of existence and try to help anyway. As they set course for the celebration, Clear reflected on how much had changed since that day in the Luna bar. She'd inherited more than a spaceship, she'd inherited a purpose, a partner, and a place in the vast, complicated tapestry of galactic civilization. The Lucky Liar flew on through space, carrying its unusual crew toward whatever crisis, celebration, or cosmic coincidence awaited them next. Behind them, the nebula swirled in patterns that almost looked like a face, a woman with kind eyes and a mischievous smile, as if the universe itself was acknowledging that sometimes the best gifts come disguised as disasters. And in the ship's cargo hold, next to the cases of vintage cereal and questionable emergency rations, a small plaque had appeared overnight, bearing words in script that seemed to shift between languages. To Clear and Noodles, keep flying, keep fixing things, and remember, the best adventures always start with someone saying, "You've got to be kidding me." It was signed with a lipstick print and smelled faintly of antifreeze and stardust. The end.